Hey, welcome back. With our roadmap complete, let's move on to writing the first file in our list, which is the functions PHP. So I'm going to open this. I'm going to start with some PHP tags and some comments. I'm just going to put the file name here to start with, and then a small description. The themes, functions, and definitions. We start with the very first thing, number 1. We're just going to number these, which will be about defining some constants. Now, these constants will be used throughout the theme. And the way to do that is to start with the define function. And we're going to start with the actual constant name. The first one will be theme root. And then the value. And the value, we want to refer to the very basic path to our theme, which is this one right here. So we can actually get the location of our style.css file. In here, we can say get style sheet directory URI. And this is also a function that will return the path to style.css. The next constant will be for the images folder. So we're going to say define images, and it will go to theme root dot /images. So basically, we're taking the theme root constant and appending the /images folder to it. The next constant will be for our scripts folder. So scripts will be theme root dot JS. So that's going to be our JS folder. And finally, we're going to define the fourth constant, which will be for our framework. Now, the framework will be a folder in which we'll keep the widgets at first, but it can be expanded to include plugins, any kind of shortcodes you might use, so it's a good place to start. And for this, I'm going to show you another way to get to this folder. We're going to say get template directory, which is a function, and we're going to append the framework folder. Yeah, so let's go ahead and create these folders. In here, I'm going to say images, I'm going to say JS, and I'm going to say framework. Next up, we're going to load our framework, which will eventually include the widgets. So I'm going to put number 2 here, load the framework. I'm just going to say require once framework /init.php. So this will load the init.php file from the framework folder. So let's go ahead and create that, framework /init.php. Let's do a PHP tag and then init.php. And we're going to work on this at the very end when we're going to add the widgets. Okay, next up, we're starting to write some WordPress specific functions. So number 3 will be about setting up the content with. And this is useful for different themes. When you're uploading an image, WordPress will automatically create a version of that image based on the width you specify. So if you have a blog page in which the content has a maximum width of 800 pixels, for example, this is the width you got to put here. So I'm going to say if the content width variable isn't set, so I'm going to say not is set content width, then we're going to say content width equals 800. And this will change from theme to theme. If you have a theme that has a very large area for displaying a post, then you can change that to 1000, 1200, whatever you need, basically. Okay, now coming up, this is very, very important. It's a function that will set up theme defaults and will register the various features of the theme. So this is number 4. And then we're going to say it's going to be a function called alpha setup. And the proper way to do this when creating a WordPress theme is to ensure that this function doesn't exist yet, because if you're using a child theme, then you might have a conflicting function. So that's not good. So we start with this: if not function exists, and we're going to put in the function name here, which is alpha setup. Then we're going to declare the function. So function alpha setup. Okay. And basically we're saying if the alpha setup function doesn't exist, we're going to declare it here. And inside we're going to write all sorts of things. But this function needs to be executed at a specific time. And that time is when a certain WordPress function executes. So we're going to add a hook. I'm going to show you what I mean in just a little bit. We're going to say add action after theme setup, alpha setup, which is the name of our function. So how exactly does this work? Well, after theme setup here is a WordPress function. It executes pretty early when you're loading a WordPress theme. And by adding a hook, which is done via this function, the add action, you're basically telling when you execute this function, also execute this function, which is our own custom function. So for example, the first one is to make the theme available for translation. So we're going to say make the theme available for translation. And we're going to start with a variable called langdir, which is language directory basically. We're going to use the theme root constant, and we're going to append languages. So that means all the files necessary for translation will be placed in the languages folder. And then we're going to say load theme text domain alpha, which if you remember from the style.css, this is what we wrote here. So alpha is our text domain, and then langdir. Now this may not make any sense right now, but it will later on. What we're saying here basically is, here's the directory in which you can find the translation files, and then we're going to load those files so that our theme will appear translated. Okay, next up is post formats. Post formats is a feature of WordPress which allows you to create different post types. You can create a post that's a quote or a video or an audio and so on. And there are several types, but in our framework we're only going to support a few just to demonstrate. So we're going to say add theme support. Now this supports two arguments. The first one is post formats. So what are we adding support for? And then the second one will be an array of all the post formats supported. So I'm going to put a comma here. And in here, I'm just going to say an array with gallery, link, image, quote, video, and audio. So what we're saying here is add theme support for post formats with these 6 formats and save. Next, we're going to add support for automatic feed links. And this will basically add RSS feed links to the head portion of your pages for posts and comments. And this is very simple. You just say add theme support for automatic feed links. Next, you're going to add support for post thumbnails. Add theme support, post thumbnails. Now, post thumbnails refers to that featured image you can attach to a post. Okay, now the last thing we got to do in this function is to register the nav menus. So we're going to say register nav menus, register nav menus. This is the function that we need, and we pass in an array of values. So we're going to say array, and then each item will be set up like this. A slug, which is main menu, it's like an ID, and then the title of that menu, so main menu. And this is how this little bit will appear in the WordPress backend. But this is in English right now. What if the theme needs to be translated? Well, we gotta mark this string for translation. So we're gonna use this function, double underscore, and then the first parameter will be this string, and the second one will be the text domain, alpha, which is used right here. Okay, so save this, and we don't need that semicolon there, and that's it basically for this function. And indeed for this lesson actually, because currently this is all we gotta do to the functions PHP file. There will be more to come, but we will add them as we go along, as we write the other files. Now, let's see, next on the list is the index.php file. So I'm going to write that in the next lesson.